My name is Molly Henderson, and I never imagined my husband and my best friend would betray me in the same breath. But when I found out, I didn't just walk away. I made sure they lost everything they built on my trust. Tonight, I'm sharing exactly how it all unfolded, moment by moment, until the truth exploded in front of everyone they knew. I could hear the click of her heels before I saw her. That same smug, confident rhythm I had once thought was elegance. Now it sounded like a countdown to her undoing. My hands rested on the stem of my wine glass, not for the drink, but to keep them steady. Across the room, I watched her scan the space like she owned it. Her arm looped through his. My husband's arm, at least for now. I didn't move. Not yet. In the past 3 months, I had learned that the sweetest part of revenge isn't the strike. It's the waiting. It's knowing that the person you're about to destroy thinks they've already won. And God, did Jenna think she had won? She looked radiant in the way only liars can, glowing with stolen things, wearing happiness she hadn't earned. The dress she wore? I recognized the designer instantly. I'd introduced her to that boutique 2 years ago. The bracelet on her wrist? A gift from me for standing as my maid of honor. And the man beside her? The one who had promised me forever? That was my wedding band on his finger, though not for much longer. The room hummed with polite laughter, wine being poured, the soft clinking of silverware against porcelain. No one else knew what I knew. Not yet. They didn't see the cracks beneath her perfect makeup or the desperation under his easy smile. They didn't know that in less than an hour, I would expose them both in a way neither could recover from. I felt a shadow move beside me. "Are you sure you're ready?" The voice was low, careful, belonging to the last person anyone here would suspect I was working with. I didn't look at him. Not yet. I've been ready since the day I found them in my kitchen. It had been an ordinary Thursday afternoon when the world split in two. I'd come home early from work, a small miracle courtesy of a canceled meeting, and thought I'd surprise my husband with lunch. Instead, I'd found his hands on Jenna's waist, his lips on her neck, her laugh filling the space where my trust used to live. They hadn't seen me. I'd left without a word. And from that moment, every breath I took was for this night. Back in the present, I swirled the wine in my glass, watching the deep red catch the light. The air between us across the room was electric, heavy with everything unspoken. He still didn't know I knew. She still thought she was safe. That was the beauty of patience. They'd grown comfortable in their betrayal. I let my gaze drift to the far side of the venue where the second player in tonight's finale had just arrived. Ryan, Jenna's ex-husband. Tall, composed, carrying himself with the kind of quiet confidence that comes from surviving something brutal. I hadn't spoken to him much before all this. We'd been polite acquaintances at best. Holiday parties, occasional dinners, nothing more. But when I reached out to him with proof of their affair, he didn't hesitate. Ryan caught my eye now, just for a second, and in that glance was a silent agreement. Tonight, they lose everything. The host tapped a glass, calling for attention. A hush fell over the room. It was time for the speeches. The carefully crafted words meant to honor love, friendship, and trust. How ironic. Jenna leaned in toward my husband, whispering something that made him laugh. I could almost admire her nerve. Almost. As the speeches began, I tuned out the empty platitudes. My mind was on the phone in my clutch, on the file queued and ready to send, on the timing that had to be perfect. This wasn't just about catching them. It was about making sure they could never rewrite the story in their favor. The speech ended, applause filled the air, and the host invited couples to the dance floor. Jenna tugged my husband toward the center, smiling like she'd stolen something precious and no one could take it back. My jaw tightened. Let her have her moment. The higher they climb, the harder they fall. Ryan moved closer to me, his presence a steady anchor. "When do you want me to?" he asked, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "On my signal," I said, my eyes never leaving them. The song playing was slow, romantic. They swayed together, faces close, lost in their own little bubble of deceit. Around them, Other couples danced, oblivious to the storm about to hit. I glanced at the clock. 5 more minutes. My phone buzzed. A message from someone stationed outside. The package had arrived. Perfect timing. Jenna spun in my husband's arms, her back to me now. That was when I stood, my heels clicking against the hardwood, cutting through the music like a metronome of doom. Conversations faltered as I crossed the room. People noticed. They always do when someone walks with intent. I stopped just a few feet away from them. My husband's smile faltered when he saw me. Jenna's eyes widened for the briefest second before she covered it with a smirk. "Molly," she said smoothly, "didn't expect to see you here tonight." I tilted my head. "Oh, I wouldn't miss it." Ryan stepped forward from the crowd, his gaze locked on Jenna. She froze and I saw it. The moment realization began to creep in, the faintest shift in her posture, the crack in her confidence. The music faded, but not because the song had ended. Someone had stopped it. All eyes were on us now, the weight of the room pressing in. My heart pounded, but my voice was steady when I spoke. "I think it's time everyone here learned the truth." Gasps, murmurs, shifting bodies. My husband opened his mouth to speak, but I raised a hand. Not yet. He would have his turn, and it would destroy him. Ryan moved to stand beside me, and together, we faced them. 2 people wronged, 2 people who had nothing left to lose. The air was thick with anticipation. "Do you want to start?" I asked Ryan. "Or should I?" He gave me the faintest smile. "Ladies first." I stepped closer, my heels inches from hers, my voice low enough for only the 4 of us to hear. "You're going to wish you'd never met me, Jenna." Her smirk faltered. Then I turned to the crowd, ready to shatter the illusion they'd so carefully built. But just as I opened my mouth, the doors at the back of the room swung open, and what walked in made even me catch my breath. And that's where I'll leave it. Before I knew what betrayal tasted like, my life was a recipe I thought I'd perfected. I was 33, happily, or so I thought, married to Daniel for 6 years, and living in a coastal neighborhood in San Diego that I had fallen in love with the first time I smelled the ocean from our front porch. My days were filled with work at the boutique interior design firm I co-owned, evening runs along the boardwalk, and weekends spent entertaining friends over wine and fresh seafood on our deck. Jenna had been part of that circle for nearly a decade. We'd met in college, 2 ambitious women who clicked instantly, both full of plans to make our mark on the world. While I pursued design, Jenna went into event planning, and over the years, she became my go-to for celebrations, surprises, and those moments when I wanted everything to be just right. She was quick-witted, stylish, always the loudest laugh in the room, and she had a way of making you feel like you were the only person who mattered when she looked at you. Ryan, her then husband, was quieter. He balanced her out, stable, reserved, the kind of man who made you feel safe. I always admired that about them, or at least I used to. Daniel was magnetic. People were drawn to him the way moths are drawn to light, warm, easygoing, effortlessly charming. I used to watch him from across a room and feel lucky that he'd chosen me. He was the kind of man who'd surprise me with coffee in bed, who'd remember small details about my day, who'd wrap an arm around me in public like it was second nature. We had our ups and downs, like any couple, but there was never a moment I doubted his loyalty. Our routines felt solid. Mornings began with him in the kitchen, brewing strong coffee while I scrolled through client emails. We'd chat about the day ahead, kiss goodbye at the door, and reconnect in the evenings. Dinner together at least 4 nights a week, no phones allowed at the table. Friday nights were sacred. We'd meet up with friends, sometimes at Jenna and Ryan's, sometimes at ours, sharing bottles of wine until the candles burned low. Looking back, I realized the comfort of those routines blinded me to the small cracks forming beneath the surface. The first one came one evening in early spring. We'd gathered at Jenna and Ryan's for a casual dinner. Grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, a playlist of indie jazz humming in the background. I remember walking into the kitchen to grab more wine and catching a glance between Jenna and Daniel. It wasn't long, barely a flicker, but it felt different. Not flirty, not yet, but there was an unspoken familiarity there that didn't belong. I told myself it was nothing. They'd known each other for years. Of course they'd have an easy rapport. Work was busy then. A big contract with a new hotel downtown had me buried in designs and site visits, sometimes working late into the night. Daniel was patient, supportive even. "You're going to make that place look like it belongs in a magazine," he'd say, pressing a kiss to my forehead before I left in the morning. "And Jenna?" She checked in often, offering to grab lunch, to rescue me from my office for a quick coffee. She said she knew how hard it was to balance everything. At the time, I believed her. There were other moments that didn't register as warning signs until much later. The way Daniel started dressing sharper for casual meetups. The way Jenna's jokes at my expense grew bolder, masked as playful ribbing. Once, during a game night, she teased me about how I was too trusting and how Daniel could get away with anything because I'd never suspect him. Everyone laughed, including me. Now, I wish I'd asked her what she meant. Our dreams were simple but intertwined. Daniel and I were saving to buy a small vacation place in Palm Springs. We'd talk about lazy weekends by the pool, hosting friends, maybe even renting it out during peak season. We'd been looking at properties, narrowing down the list, and I remember thinking how lucky I was to have a partner who shared my vision for the future. Jenna, meanwhile, had been having trouble with Ryan. Little arguments that she confided to me over drinks. She said he didn't get her ambition, that he was too set in his ways. I told her all marriages had their challenges, that communication was key. She'd nod, agree, and then change the subject. I never thought she'd take her search for understanding to my doorstep. The night that sticks out the most, the one I should have paid attention to, was in late May. It was a Friday, and Daniel had invited a small group over for a backyard barbecue. Jenna arrived without Ryan, saying he'd had a long week and wanted to stay in. She floated through the evening like she owned it, refilling drinks, laughing loudly, touching Daniel's arm as she passed by him. At one point, I stepped inside to grab more ice. When I came back out, Jenna and Daniel were at the grill, heads bent close together, laughing at something. His hand rested briefly on the small of her back as he reached for the tongs. It was quick, casual, the kind of touch that would mean nothing between most friends. But something about the ease of it made my chest tighten. Later that night, after the guests had left, I mentioned it to Daniel. He brushed it off with a smile. "Molly, she's your best friend? I was just making sure she didn't burn herself. You really think I'd—" He trailed off, shaking his head, looking almost hurt that I'd even implied it. I apologized, feeling guilty for doubting him. That was the thing about Daniel. He knew exactly how to make you feel like you were wrong for suspecting him. We went on with our lives. Birthdays, anniversaries, the usual ebb and flow. Jenna's split from Ryan became official in early summer. She said she was focusing on herself, on rebuilding. I invited her over more often, thinking I was helping. Daniel never complained. In fact, he seemed to enjoy her company. Too much, though I didn't admit that to myself at the time. Then came the red flag I can't ignore, even now. It was a Thursday evening in late July. I'd been working late at the hotel site and called Daniel to see if he wanted me to pick up dinner on the way home. He didn't answer, so I sent a quick text. No reply. When I got home, the house was quiet, but his car was in the driveway. I walked in to find 2 wine glasses on the counter, a half-empty bottle of Merlot, and a faint trace of Jenna's perfume in the air. Daniel emerged from the hallway a moment later, freshly showered, hair damp, wearing the old t-shirt he usually slept in. He smiled like nothing was out of place. "Hey, you're home early." I asked if Jenna had been over. He hesitated, just for a beat, before saying, "She stopped by to drop off some event invites. Didn't think it was worth mentioning." I wanted to believe him. I told myself I did. But that hesitation, it lodged itself in my mind like a splinter. And splinters, if you leave them long enough, have a way of festering. It happened on an afternoon so ordinary, it should have been forgettable. But instead, it's burned into me. Every sound, every smell, every second. Like a scar you can't stop touching. It was early September, the kind of warm San Diego day where the air smells faintly of salt and sunscreen, even miles from the beach. I had left the hotel site earlier than planned. The contractors had hit a snag with the lighting fixtures, and rather than sit in traffic, I thought I'd head home, surprise Daniel with takeout from his favorite Thai place, maybe open a bottle of wine. We'd been distant lately, but I told myself a quiet night might bridge the gap. The driveway was empty when I pulled up, which was strange. Daniel's car wasn't there. But as I walked toward the house, I noticed something that stopped me cold. The back gate, the one that opened to our deck, was unlatched. Daniel was meticulous about that gate. He said it kept the sea breeze from banging it against the fence. I pushed it open and stepped quietly onto the deck. The sliding glass door was cracked open just enough for voices to slip through. A laugh floated out, light and intimate. Not mine. I froze, the takeout bags hanging from my fingers, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. You really think she suspects anything? It was Jenna's voice, low and teasing. Daniel's reply came with a chuckle. Molly? No, she's too busy with that hotel project to notice. Besides, she trusts us. The word trust twisted in my stomach like a knife. I inched forward until I could see into the living room through the open door. Jenna was perched on the arm of our couch, her bare legs draped across Daniel's lap. He had one hand on her thigh, the other holding a glass of wine. My wine. The one I'd been saving for our Palm Springs trip. She reached down, brushing her fingers along his jaw. We could just tell her. Daniel shook his head, smiling. Why ruin a good thing? We get to have our fun, and she keeps playing the perfect wife. Everybody wins. Everybody wins. My breath caught, loud enough that I thought they might hear me. But they were too wrapped up in each other to notice. I stepped back, my hands trembling so hard the takeout bags rustled. I gripped them tighter, forcing myself to stay quiet. I didn't storm in. I didn't scream. I didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. Instead, I walked back through the gate, around the side of the house, and to my car. I drove 3 blocks away before I pulled over. My hands were still shaking as I set the food on the passenger seat. My vision blurred, not from tears, not yet, but from the sheer force of rage pressing behind my eyes. I sat there for nearly 15 minutes, replaying what I'd heard. It wasn't just that they were sleeping together. It wasn't a drunken mistake or a one-time lapse in judgment. It was calculated, planned, sustained. They'd been feeding off my trust like parasites, laughing about it in the home I built with him. When the tears finally came, they weren't soft. They were hot, angry, almost bitter. I cried for the version of me that thought I was safe, for the life I thought I had, for the people I believed were mine. That night, I didn't go home. I texted Daniel saying I was staying with a colleague to finish up project work. His response came quickly, a thumbs-up emoji. No question, no concern. Just a lazy acknowledgement. I drove to a hotel on the other side of the city, checked in under my business card, and sat in the dark with my phone in my lap. I could have called Jenna. I could have confronted Daniel. But what would that do? Give them a scene they'd later twist into a joke over wine? No. If they thought I was oblivious, then I had something they didn't. Time. I scrolled through my phone, through years of photos and messages. There it all was. Jenna and me in Vegas for my bachelorette party. Daniel and I in matching Christmas sweaters. Jenna at our wedding, her arm linked with mine, smiling for the camera. I zoomed in on her face, wondering how long she'd been planning this. The next day, I went home as if nothing had happened. Daniel greeted me with a kiss, light and casual, like the man I'd married. Jenna texted me that afternoon. Miss you? Coffee soon? The audacity made my teeth ache. Over the next week, I paid attention. Really paid attention. I noticed how Daniel's phone was always face down on the counter, How Jenna's laugh had a different pitch when he was in the room. How they seemed to know where the other would be without speaking. And the more I saw, the more certain I became. This wasn't a fling. It was an operation. They were strategizing, moving pieces, ensuring their little arrangement stayed hidden. One evening, Daniel came home late, claiming he'd been at the gym. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair still damp, but from a shower, not sweat. I watched him eat dinner, every casual movement rehearsed, every lie slipping off his tongue like honey. I thought about how easy it would be to scream the truth at him, to throw my wine in his face, to pack a bag and leave. But that would end it too soon. No. I wanted something else. Something permanent. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. I was working in my home office when I heard the front door open. I assumed it was Daniel, but then I caught the sound of heels. Quick, confident. Jenna's heels. They didn't know I was home. I stood in the hallway, hidden from view, as their voices floated toward me. "Can't believe she's still clueless," Jenna said, laughing. Daniel's voice was lower, but I caught every word. "She's not the type to snoop. That's why it works." Jenna giggled. "Maybe she's too boring to even suspect. You ever think about that?" My nails dug into my palms so hard I felt the skin break. Daniel chuckled. "Boring? Maybe. But useful. She's the reason I can afford half the things we do." That was it. Not just betrayal. Not just cheating. They were using me, my trust, my work, my money, as the foundation for their little fantasy. I stepped back into my office and shut the door, forcing my breathing to steady. They stayed less than 20 minutes, leaving together through the back. I didn't follow. I didn't need to, because in that moment I made a decision. They thought I was naive, that I wouldn't notice, that if I did, I'd simply collapse, hand them the keys to the life I'd built, and disappear quietly. But I wasn't going to disappear. I was going to watch. I was going to wait. I was going to build something so precise, so devastating, that when it hit, it wouldn't just end them. It would erase the version of themselves they'd been performing for the world. That night, I lay in bed beside Daniel, listening to his even breathing. He had no idea. I stared at the ceiling and thought, "You wanted to play games? Fine. Let's play." And from that thought, the revenge began. The decision wasn't born in a single flash of rage. It came slowly, like the ocean pulling back before a wave. A gathering of power, quiet but unstoppable. In the days after I overheard Daniel and Jenna's conversation in my own home, I kept playing their words in my mind. Not the ones about fun or keeping me clueless. It was useful. That one word snapped something inside me. It wasn't enough for them to betray me. They had to reduce me to a tool, a convenience, a resource they could drain while smirking in my face. That night, lying next to him in the dark, I realized the only thing worse than their betrayal would be letting them get away with it. Daniel was asleep within minutes. He always slept like the world was safe. I turned on my side and studied him, my eyes adjusting to the soft shadows. This was the man I'd trusted with everything. And now, every breath he took was a reminder of how thoroughly I'd been deceived. I didn't want to scream anymore. I didn't even want answers. I wanted destruction. The beauty of betrayal, I realized, is that it makes people sloppy. They think they've already won. Daniel and Jenna had grown bold. Lunches that ran long, unreturned texts, private jokes in plain view. They assumed I wouldn't connect the dots, and when I did, they assumed I'd be too heartbroken to act. They were right about one thing. I was heartbroken. But heartbreak is only dangerous when it turns into resolve. 3 days later, I tested my theory. I told Daniel I was heading to Palm Springs for a design conference. I booked a hotel room 2 hours north instead and stayed there for 2 nights, my phone on silent. When I returned, there was no sign he'd missed me, not a single text. Just a casual, "How was the trip?" as he scrolled through his phone at the kitchen counter. Perfect. He was predictable. Jenna, too, was predictable. She kept up the act of being my friend, but there was a laziness to it now. She'd stop by without calling, always with some flimsy excuse, dropping off a flyer, borrowing a dish, asking for my opinion on a client's wedding centerpiece. She'd sit at my kitchen island, chatting like nothing was wrong, unaware I was memorizing every detail. The brand of perfume she wore, the way she kept her phone angled away from me, the smirk she couldn't hide when Daniel's name lit up her screen. The more I watched, the calmer I felt. This wasn't about catching them in the act anymore. This was about control. About dismantling them so thoroughly that they wouldn't even see the ground vanish under their feet until they were falling. I started small. I forgot to mention things, like an upcoming payment from my firm, or the fact that a mutual friend was back in town. I watched as they exchanged confused glances when someone referenced an event they hadn't heard about. It was subtle, but it chipped away at the little bubble they'd built together. At the same time, I began to re-establish contact with Ryan, Jenna's ex-husband. I framed it as curiosity, asking about an event space he'd managed for a client of mine. We met for coffee, then lunch, and soon I found myself with a partner, someone who had every reason to see them fall. Ryan was measured, careful, and just as committed to precision as I was. Daniel noticed eventually. One evening, he asked casually, "You've been seeing a lot of Ryan lately. Everything okay there?" I smiled. Of course, just business. And there it was, the first flicker of unease in his eyes. Good. Let him wonder. The turning point came one Saturday afternoon when Jenna invited me to a girls' day at a spa. I agreed, mostly to see how far she'd take her performance. She talked about her dating life, pretending to be single, about soulmates and chemistry, her eyes glittering with some private joke. Halfway through the day, she leaned in and said, "You know, Molly, if I ever find a man like Daniel, I'm never letting him go." It was meant to be playful, maybe even flattering, but to me, it was the confirmation I needed. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't conflicted. She was staking a claim. I excused myself to the restroom, splashed cold water on my face, and looked at my reflection. I didn't see a victim. I saw someone who had been handed the perfect opportunity. When I returned, I hugged her goodbye, told her we needed to do this more often, and smiled like she was still my best friend. She had no idea that the moment I walked out of that spa, I stopped being Molly the wife and became Molly the architect, the one drawing the blueprints for her and Daniel's ruin. The first move had to be invisible. I started documenting everything. Dates, times, places. I pulled bank statements, backed up old photos, saved every text Jenna had sent me in the past 2 years. I even installed a hidden camera in the corner of our living room under the guise of testing it for a client's Airbnb remodel. The footage piled up quickly. Little things, but enough to tell a story when stitched together. A touch too long, a whisper too close, the occasional disappearance into the hallway together when they thought I wasn't home. Each clip was a brick in the wall I was building around them, a wall that would close in until there was no way out. Daniel still kissed me goodbye each morning, still asked about my day over dinner. He didn't notice the way my answers grew shorter, the way I stopped offering details. He didn't see the shift in my eyes when he told me about working late. He thought the game was his. Jenna was no different. She kept up the charade of friendship, even offering to help me plan an anniversary party for Daniel. The irony almost made me laugh. They underestimated me completely. That was the key. They saw me as the same Molly they'd always known, trusting, busy, too comfortable to question them. And I let them keep that illusion because it was the most powerful weapon I had. Revenge isn't about striking first. It's about making the other person believe you never will. Late one night, when Daniel was asleep and the house was still, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, reviewing the folder I'd labeled Foundations. It was a fitting name. You can't build something lasting without the right groundwork. And what I was building would last, not just in the moment of impact, but in the way it would haunt them long after the dust settled. I closed the laptop, my reflection caught in the black screen. I barely recognized the woman staring back, calm, certain, unflinching. They thought I hadn't started yet, but the truth, I already had. Revenge wasn't going to be a single blow. It had to be a sequence, a carefully choreographed series of events where every step pulled them in closer, until they were standing exactly where I wanted them when the floor gave out. I began with information. Information is power, and I wanted more than proof of their affair. I wanted evidence of their character, the kind you can't talk your way out of. The first move was digital. I knew Daniel's phone passcode. He'd never changed it since the day we got engaged. Late at night, while he slept, I mirrored his messages to my laptop using a backup sync. I didn't rush. I took my time, scrolling back months. Text chains with Jenna were my goldmine. There were no graphic admissions. They weren't that stupid. But there were innuendos, shared jokes at my expense, and references to our nights and when she's gone. I downloaded everything. Screenshots, timestamps, locations. Next, I turned to finances. Daniel and I had joint accounts, but I knew he kept a separate one for business expenses. I logged in using his stored browser credentials and found charges that didn't match his claimed activities. Hotel stays in town, expensive dinners in neighborhoods we never frequented, jewelry stores I'd never shopped in. Each entry was another thread in the net I was weaving. Jenna was trickier. She was careful in her texts to me. Nothing incriminating, nothing emotional. But her Instagram? That was a different story. I started noticing patterns. The same wine glass in different solo photos, captions about unexpected adventures posted on nights Daniel had been working late. Sometimes the devil isn't in the details. It is the details. I saved them all. From there, I needed allies. But not the kind who'd blurt the truth before I was ready. The first was Ryan. We met at a quiet wine bar on a Wednesday evening. I laid it all out. The recordings, the texts, the financial records. He didn't interrupt, just listened, his jaw tightening with every piece of proof. When I finished, he set down his glass. Whatever you're thinking, I'm in. The second ally was less obvious. Olivia, my assistant at the design firm. She'd always had a soft spot for me, and she had a knack for research that bordered on obsessive. I told her I was doing a personal background project on someone, and she didn't ask questions. Within days, she'd given me a spreadsheet of Jenna's event clients, her work schedule, and even the registration for her car. With my team in place, the planning became addictive. I started thinking in terms of cause and effect. If I moved this piece, what would fall? How could I make the chain reaction so inevitable that by the time they realized what was happening, they couldn't stop it? The first brush with danger came sooner than I'd expected. One night, I was transferring files from the hidden camera when Daniel walked into my office without knocking. I minimized the window in a flash, my heart thundering. He glanced at the screen. "Working late?" he asked. "Always," I smiled, steadying my voice. That moment taught me something valuable. My plan couldn't just be smart. It had to be invisible. They couldn't suspect a thing, not even a shift in my tone or routine. So I doubled down on the performance. I laughed at Daniel's stories, made plans with Jenna, sent them both casual texts as if life was normal. If they noticed anything different, they must have chalked it up to me being busy. The tools of my revenge grew more sophisticated. I bought a small GPS tracker, hidden in the lining of Daniel's gym bag. It was amazing how predictable they were. Hotel meetups on Thursdays, long errand runs on Saturdays, lunches that started late and ended in places with no cell reception. Every ping from that tracker was another nail in their coffin. But the beauty of the plan wasn't just in gathering dirt. It was in deciding how to use it. Destroying them privately wasn't enough. No, this betrayal had been performed in my home, in my life, in my face. The reveal had to be public. And not just public. It had to be irreversible. One evening, while Daniel was in the shower, I sat on the bed and outlined it in a notebook. Secure evidence. Digital, financial, and visual. Build narrative. Sequence the evidence to tell a clear, undeniable story. Control timing. Choose the moment when their confidence is highest. Ensure witnesses. People they can't dismiss or manipulate. Deliver the blow, publicly, strategically, and with no exit. The moment of highest confidence became my obsession. I needed them relaxed, smug, completely convinced they'd gotten away with it. And then, in a split second, I'd flip the world on its head. The opportunity came gift-wrapped in early November. Jenna invited me and Daniel to a holiday gala she was organizing for one of her high-profile clients. It would be black tie, expensive, packed with San Diego's social set, exactly the audience I wanted. Better yet, she insisted on seating us together at the head table. Perfect. In the weeks leading up to the gala, I built the delivery system. Ryan secured a high-quality projector from his office, one that could be connected discreetly to a laptop. Olivia helped me format the evidence into a seamless video. No commentary, no accusations, just the cold, chronological truth. Messages, photos, bank statements, GPS logs. And finally, a 2-minute clip from the hidden camera showing them in my living room. His hand on her thigh, her whispering, "She'll never know." Every time I watched that clip, the rage in me cooled into something sharper, more precise. 2 weeks before the gala, I nearly got caught again. Jenna stopped by unannounced while I was reviewing the video in my office. I heard the front door open and barely had time to close the laptop before she appeared in the doorway. "Working on anything exciting?" she asked, leaning against the frame. I forced a smile. "Just a client's remodel plans." She smirked like she knew something I didn't. I smirked back, knowing she had no idea. The closer the gala came, the more meticulous I became. I double-checked the file backups, rehearsed the sequence of events in my mind, even walked through the venue with Ryan under the guise of helping Jenna with logistics. Every detail had to be flawless. The stakes weren't just high, they were absolute. If this failed, if they saw it coming, they'd spin it. I'd become the jealous wife, the paranoid friend. My credibility would vanish. But if it worked, they'd lose everything they'd been building on the foundation of my trust. The last piece fell into place 3 days before the gala. Ryan texted me, "Got the perfect angle for the projector. No one will see it coming." I stared at the message, the reality sinking in. Months of quiet rage, of pretending, of collecting and curating. And now, it was ready. I closed my notebook, slid it into the drawer, and locked it. This wasn't a plan anymore. It was an execution waiting to happen. The night of the gala, the air in San Diego felt sharper, cooler, like the city itself knew something was about to break. I stood in front of the mirror, fastening the clasp on my black velvet gown. My hair was swept up, my makeup flawless. I looked like the perfect wife, ready to stand proudly beside her husband in public. Inside, though, I was a surgeon sharpening her scalpel. Daniel was already dressed when I walked downstairs. He smiled, slipping his arm around my waist. "You look incredible." "Thank you," I said softly, meeting his eyes. He didn't see the storm behind them. The venue was a grand ballroom overlooking the harbor, glittering with crystal chandeliers and filled with the scent of white roses. Jenna was in her element, hosting, laughing, floating between tables with the ease of someone who believed she was untouchable. She wore a deep red gown, her hair in loose waves, and every time she looked at Daniel, there was that glint of possession in her eyes. Perfect. Let her feel like she owns the night. Ryan and I had already executed the technical setup earlier in the day. The projector was hidden inside a decorative panel near the stage, angled perfectly toward the massive central screen. My laptop was connected, the file ready, the remote hidden in my clutch. All it would take was one button. The seating was as Jenna had promised, Daniel on my right, Jenna across from me, Ryan at her side. I smiled through the small talk, through Daniel's hand on my thigh, through Jenna's compliments about my dress. Every laugh I gave was a rehearsed move in this final act. Dinner was served, wine poured, speeches began. I barely tasted the food. My pulse was steady, my mind locked on the sequence. Then it came. The perfect cue. The MC announced they would be showing a short video Jenna had prepared for her client, a montage celebrating their company's successes. The lights dimmed, and I knew it was my moment. While the tech crew switched inputs, I pressed the button inside my clutch. The screen flickered once. Then my video began. At first, it looked like a regular slideshow. Photos of me, Daniel, and Jenna over the years, smiling at dinners, on trips, at my wedding. A few people murmured about how sweet it was. Then the messages appeared. Daniel. Thursday works, same place. Jenna. She'll be at work until 7. Bring the wine. Gasps rippled through the crowd. More messages, more direct. Jenna. Last night was perfect. She has no idea. Daniel. She never will. The room went still except for the quiet clicks of cutlery being set down. Jenna shifted in her seat, her smile faltering. Daniel's hand froze on the table. Then came the bank statements. Hotel charges, jewelry receipts, the necklace she was wearing right now. The GPS logs appeared next, Daniel's car pinging at the same boutique hotel week after week, and then the final clip, grainy, but unmistakable, my living room. Daniel on the couch, Jenna curled against him, his hand on her thigh, her voice crystal clear. She'll never know. Silence. Then whispers. Then the sound of a wine glass tipping over somewhere in the room. Daniel turned to me, his face pale. Molly, don't, I said quietly, my eyes locked on his. Across the table, Jenna was flushed, her chest rising and falling rapidly. This is out of context. Ryan laughed, sharp, humorless. Context? That was my living room once. I think I understand the context just fine. The MC, flustered, tried to speak, but no one was listening. All eyes were on us. Exactly as I'd planned. I stood slowly, feeling every gaze follow me. For those of you wondering, I said, my voice carrying clearly in the hushed room, this wasn't an accident. This wasn't a mistake. This was months of lies, paid for with my trust and my money. Daniel pushed back his chair, standing as if to stop me. We can talk about this. No, I cut him off. You had your time to talk. You chose to spend it with her. I turned to Jenna, my voice dropping to something colder. You said once you'd never let go of a man like Daniel. Congratulations. Now you can keep him. You'll need to, because after tonight you won't have anyone else. Gasps. A few muffled laughs. Someone clapped, quickly silenced by the tension. Ryan stood beside me now. And for the record, he said, looking directly at Jenna, I'm filing for full custody of the kids. I have more than enough proof that you're unfit. That hit her harder than the video. Her mouth opened, closed, then opened again. But nothing came out. Daniel reached for me again, but I stepped back. Oh, one more thing, I said, pulling a folded document from my clutch. This is the termination of your access to all joint accounts. I already moved the funds. Consider it repayment for every dinner, hotel, and gift you bought her with my money. A murmur of approval ran through the crowd. The humiliation was total, but I wasn't done. The final blow had to leave them with nothing to twist, nothing to salvage. I took a deep breath, then looked directly at the client Jenna had organized the gala for, a man with deep pockets and a reputation for zero tolerance toward scandal. I thought you should know, I said evenly, that some of the charity funds Jenna's been managing have been used for her personal entertainment. I have the receipts if you'd like them. The man's face hardened instantly. We'll talk Monday, he said curtly, his tone a death sentence for her career. Jenna's hand shot out toward me. You can't. I already did, I said, turning my back on her. The room was electric, a mix of shock, discomfort, and something else. Satisfaction. People love a scandal, especially when the guilty can't deny it. Ryan and I walked out together, the screen behind us still frozen on the image of Daniel and Jenna in my living room. As the cold night air hit my face, I felt it. Not joy? Not exactly, but a release. The kind that comes when you've taken something back that was stolen from you. Back inside, Their lives were collapsing in real time. Daniel would lose his reputation, his finances, his wife. Jenna would lose her career, her credibility, her social circle, and her children. And they'd both lose the one thing they valued most: control. Because now, everyone knew exactly who they were. In the weeks after the gala, the wreckage spread like wildfire. Daniel tried calling me at first. Long voicemails that swung between rage and pleading. I didn't answer. By the time the divorce papers were served, his tone had gone flat, like he'd already resigned himself to the loss. The joint accounts were closed, the house was mine, and his belongings were packed and left in storage. Mutual friends stopped inviting him anywhere. The ones who didn't outright confront him kept their distance, afraid of the social fallout. His job didn't survive either. A client's wife had been at the gala, and within days, word had reached his boss. The official reason was ethical misconduct, but everyone knew the truth. Jenna's fall was faster, almost cinematic. The client she'd been hosting the gala for pulled her contract immediately. Other clients followed suit, citing concerns about professionalism. Her name stopped appearing on the city's event circuit. The custody battle with Ryan was brutal. Every message, every photo, every receipt was handed to the court. He won full custody. She was allowed supervised visits twice a month. I heard she moved into a small apartment in a less glamorous part of town. She sold her designer dresses online. The red gown from the gala disappeared into whatever dark corner she now occupied. People asked if I felt better, lighter, victorious. I told them the truth. I felt free. Not because I'd hurt them, but because they couldn't touch me anymore. Life settled into a new rhythm. I poured my energy back into my business, took long walks along the beach, and reconnected with people I'd neglected during my marriage. Ryan and I stayed in touch, our conversations easy, built on mutual respect instead of shared bitterness. 3 months after the gala, I was at a quiet cafe downtown when I saw them. Daniel and Jenna. Not together. That would have been too pathetic even for them. But close enough in the same space that I wondered if it was planned. He looked thinner, his suit hanging a little too loosely on him. She looked tired. The kind of tired makeup can't fix. They noticed me at the same time. For a moment, neither moved. Then Daniel gave a small, almost apologetic nod. Jenna just stared. I smiled. Not a smirk, not a sneer, just a calm acknowledgement. And went back to my coffee. It was over. Or at least I thought it was. The final twist came 2 weeks later. Ryan called, his voice carrying that careful edge people use when they're about to drop bad news. "You're not going to believe this," he said. Apparently, Jenna had been trying to claw her way back into the event business, taking small gigs for low pay. One of those gigs had been for a corporate retreat, booked at the very hotel where she and Daniel used to meet. Someone, maybe an employee, maybe someone with a long memory, leaked the security footage from one of those nights. Not just to the company, but to a gossip site that specialized in local scandals. The headline was brutal. "Disgraced event planner caught in affair at client hotel." The footage wasn't new to me. I'd seen it months ago while gathering evidence. But it was new to the public, and now strangers were watching it, sharing it, dissecting it frame by frame. When Ryan told me, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't expected. Not guilt, but the realization that my revenge had grown legs of its own. I hadn't released that video. I didn't need to. Once the truth is out, it has a way of multiplying. The last time I saw Jenna was on the local news. A blurry shot of her leaving the courthouse, head down. Reporters shouting questions she didn't answer. Daniel wasn't there. I doubted he ever would be again. And as I switched off the TV, I realized something that made me smile for the first time in days. I had planned every step of their downfall, but the final blow? That was the universe finishing the job. Thank you for watching my story. I know it was intense, but sometimes the truth needs to be told exactly as it happened. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Or if you've ever been through something like this, share your experience in the comments below. Your stories matter. And if you enjoyed this video and want to hear more, make sure you subscribe to the Velvet Revenge channel and give this video a like. It helps more people find these stories, and it means the world to me. Until next time, take care of yourself and never ignore the red flags.